Hey guys, what's up? Welcome to Zooty Pickups. In today's video, we'll be talking about the Nike Air Max 270 React ENG Travis Scott Cactus Trails. Now that's gotta be like the longest name I've ever said on this channel. So these shoes came out May 29th of 2020 for a retail price of $170. And it comes to us as the 10th collaboration in between Nike and Travis Scott. At least I think it's the 10th. Let's count, right? We had 3 Air Force Ones, right? We had the white sail and patchwork one, and then we had 2 Air Jordan 1s, the low and the high. Then we had the Air Jordan 4s, we have Air Jordan 6s, Air Jordan 33s, and most recently there were the Dunk Lows. Yeah, so I think this is the 10th one, right? So 10 collaborations in between Travis Scott and Nike. I think Nike is trying not to make the same mistake they made with Kanye. They're gonna try to milk Travis Scott as much as possible while they still have him on contract. And yeah, this shoe release definitely came with a lot of marketing push too. There was like a huge campaign. They had like a website, like a Cactus Trails like website, which looked like a website from the 90s, like with HTML 1.0. And you know, they had like a VR app, and they had a whole lot of like apparel that came out with it, like sweaters, pants, t-shirts, and whatnot. They even got Mick Foley, the OG Cactus Jack. He was the wrestler that went by the name of Cactus Jack, like back in the day, show up in the promotional material, right? Funny fact, I believe there was some sort of legal dispute in between Mick Foley and Travis Scott regarding the usage of the name Cactus Jack, but it looks like they came to an amicable agreement because he's showing up in Travis's ads, right? Maybe some money involved. Anywho, this entire collection, it's kind of an odd collection. It's like, the theme is kind of like a retro outdoorsy, like desert trekking theme. It's kind of odd, but it kind of works at the same time. It's kind of the direction Nike ACG has been going for the last year and a half or so. So, I mean, it kind of works out, right? The shoe, as you can see, it's like it has artificial distressing on it. It looks like, you know, someone wore it while trekking across the desert and left it in some like abandoned mine shaft for 10 years and someone fished it out after that. The artificial distressed look, you know, you either hate it or you love it. It's like one of those things. A lot of high-end fashion companies have been kind of doing this. Like, I think Balenciaga did it with like a triple S colorway. Put a picture right there, and Margiela had like a shoe that looked like it'd been cobbled together with like hot glue and dirt and stuff like that. So, you know, the whole weathered kind of like age looking shoe thing is not a new concept, but for Nike, you know, I think I haven't seen a shoe like this artificially aged. The Nigel Sylvester Jordan 1s, you know, it did have a little bit of aging and scuffing and stuff like that, but nothing to this level, right? So yeah, I think it's interesting to see that Nike is kind of keeping up with the trends of the high fashion world. So enough about that. Let's talk about the shoe itself. So we're gonna start from top to bottom and kind of talk about all the details here. So starting out with the upper. So as you can see, the base material of the upper is this very interesting 3D textured mesh. So here we can see that there is almost like a topographic or almost like a fingerprint type of pattern knitted into the mesh here to kind of create that 3D mesh effect. And on top of that, they put a TPU ribbon exoskeleton to kind of give the shoe some rigidity and structure. So the exoskeleton kind of keeps your foot in place, and the layer under that, the 3D mesh, kind of gives you that ventilation and flexibility. One cool thing that I noticed was the angles at which the TPU ribbons and the topographic or fingerprint textures meet are kind of at a perpendicular angle, so it creates a lot of these X's all throughout the shoe, and I think it does a good job filling in that kind of like visual void here on the lateral and medial sides. Interesting thing I've noticed, I saw Brad Hall's video for this shoe, and like, I don't know, he got like a stencil to put on here for like a backward swoosh, kind of like the Jordan 1s, right? I didn't get any stencil. Maybe you have to be an influencer to get the stencil. I don't know. Did anyone else that got the shoe get the stencil in the box? Because I didn't. Anyway, I guess I wouldn't really have actually spray painted the shoe by myself, but I mean, it's definitely a cool thing to have. So anyway, moving on, let's go to the front of the shoe, the toe box. We have a brown mud guard here made out of this like ruggedized kind of like artificial suede material. And it kind of reminds me of the mud guard from the Yeezy Wave Runners to an extent. It kind of has that shape. There is a embroidered Nike swoosh on the lateral side done in white, and that's pretty much it here. Moving up to the center of the shoe, we have the exact same ruggedized suede artificial material kind of flanking the lace box here, done in gray. And then we have these little red lace loops kind of highlighting the tongue. Speaking of the tongue is not your traditional just kind of like floppy formless tongue. It is a structured tongue. There's kind of like a foam underlay in here and some plastic in here too to give the tongue itself some structure. So as you can see, it's a freestanding tongue. It stands up by itself, and it does have some like three-dimensionality to it. So I think that's pretty cool. I don't think I've really seen anything like that before. Another interesting design feature on the tongue are these lace locks, I guess. It's purple and teal, and I think, you know, you're supposed to like put your laces through them. I guess if you don't want to tie your laces, so you can like kind of like put your laces through them like so, like that. But I don't know, as you can see, that looks ridiculous. It looks like my shoe has antennas, like it looks like an ant. So I don't think I would ever wear the shoe like that. So I'm assuming this lace lock is more or less for aesthetic purposes and not for you to actually put your laces through. So yeah, under the lace lock, we have the Air Max 270 logo printed on this this tan webbing, and it's like this pretty cool like embossed rubber effect, which is pretty neat. Moving on to the rear of the shoe, the heel area. This is like my favorite part of the shoe. You can see that we have some micro fleece here in this kind of like taupe color, right? And then we have the Nike swoosh embroidered in orange, and it just goes all the way around that micro fleece all the way to the medial side. And I really love that. The micro fleece, you know, you don't really see micro fleece on a shoe. And I think micro fleece is like a representative material of like retro kind of like outdoorsy fashion, like, you know, 90s like Patagonia and 90s North Face definitely use a lot of micro fleece. So I think this kind of like completes the concept of the collection really well. Moving to the back of the shoe, you can see we have one of the two only mentions of Cactus Jack on this shoe. We have the Cactus Jack cross logo kind of done creatively here. We have that horizontal piece of webbing and that vertical piece of webbing to create the pull tab, and you can see the printing is done in the same way as the tongue here. It's like that rubberized font embossed directly onto the webbing. So moving into the shoe, the inside of the shoe is pretty simple. There's not a whole lot going on. The entirety of the inside of the shoe is consisted of this super airy mesh that allows your foot to breathe really well. And there is a removable insole. And there is where you can see the second Cactus Jack mention on the shoe. And that's it. Those are the only two parts of the shoe where you'll ever see the Cactus Jack branding. Otherwise, apart from that, there's not a whole lot to talk about here on the insole. It's just a standard flimsy Nike insole. So let's move out from the inside to the outside of the shoe, and let's talk about the midsole and the outsole. So this is probably one of the most interesting parts of the shoe due to the artificial kind of like weathering of the shoe and like the whole like aging effect, right? So the midsole here is a standard Air Max 270 React midsole, as you can see, and they've painted this almost like varnish, like orange rust colored varnish all around it. It's kind of like a wash almost, and it has to have been done by hand because you can see that in certain areas of the shoe the wash kind of extends all the way up to the upper, like here and there. Apart from that, like the wash only exists on the midsole and the outsole and not on the upper. So A lot of people, I think, are wondering, does this wash come off? I tried rubbing it with some water and it did not come off. Maybe if you use some more harsher chemicals like acetone, it might come off. But just so you know, it won't come off very easily with water. An interesting thing to note is also the huge air bubble here is also finished with that kind of like same weatherized effect. I mean, it basically looks like a really old pair of Air Maxes that you found in your like mom's garage from when you were like in second grade. It actually looks pretty genuine, the aging effect. But like I said earlier, you know, the whole aging effect thing, I think if you like it, this is probably really cool. If you don't like it, you think this is probably really weird or lame. So moving on to the outsole here, we have the rubberized inlays that act kind of as the outsole. They're kind of like embedded into the React midsole to give it more durability. And one thing I want to note here is the fact that the outsole has a different type of weathering than the midsole. So the midsole has this kind of like, you know, almost like bronze colored varnish. The outsole, it just kind of looks like there's a fine layer of sand on it. So it almost looks like you kind of wore these to trek across a desert or something like that, and you still have like that sand residue left on the outsole. So I think that's pretty cool, right? Because, you know, this kind of thing, like you wear it once, this is just gonna all wear off, and even if it doesn't wear off, it's on the bottom of the shoe. No one's really ever gonna look at it. So the fact that they, you know, took the time and effort to put this effect on the bottom of the shoe, it shows me that they really pay attention to detail, and I love that about shoes. So yeah, I think that pretty much covers all the features and design details of the shoe. Next, I want to talk about sizing and comfort. So in terms of sizing, I would recommend sizing half a size up. And I say that because of the exoskeleton, like the TPU ribbon cage. It kind of restricts your foot and doesn't allow the upper to bag out as much. So like compared to a shoe like, you know, Yeezys or Ultra Boost that have knit uppers, they kind of bag out. They're a little more forgiving. This shoe is not as forgiving. So especially if you have wider feet like I do, I would definitely recommend sizing up half a size. Even if you don't have wide feet, if you just want to have a comfortable shoe, I would still recommend sizing up half a size. So now let's talk about comfort. So the shoe is extremely comfortable. Look at all this React foam under your feet. This is a ton of React foam. It's probably like the most React I've ever seen in a single shoe. And on top of that, you have this gigantic air unit that pretty much takes up half of your foot. And those two in conjunction create a very cushioned yet responsive ride. So this is like, you know, the type of shoe that you can wear like all day and be pretty comfortable. On top of that, we have this very well ventilated upper that's very air permeable. And I think you could probably even wear this without socks, to be honest, because it's so air permeable. One thing I would like to note is that the shoe has an extremely high heel offset. That means your heel sits way higher than your toe, so you're kind of like canted forward a little bit. You're angled forward, like almost as if you're wearing heels. I mean, like not as aggressive as heels, but you kind of get the idea, right? And over time, if you wear the shoe, and if you wear the shoe like for a long period of time, I have heard from some of my friends that it can be a little uncomfortable. So that is one thing to definitely note. So the last thing I want to talk about today is applicability and wearability of this shoe. So as you can see, the shoe is kind of out there, you know, it's not exactly a subtle shoe, right? But I think you can definitely make it work as long as you kind of keep it on theme, right? So the whole theme is retro outdoorsy. So maybe if you wear it with like a Patagonia cinchilla with some crazy designs, some baggies, I think it could work. Also, it could probably work with Nike's ACG line, which pretty much is what this shoe is inspired off of. I think a lot of the stuff that Nike ACG has been coming out with ever since Errolson Hugh left the helm like a year and a half ago. It's very much like retro outdoorsy, so it goes in line perfectly with this shoe. So yeah, I think that pretty much wraps up everything I have to say about this shoe. You know, the shoe definitely is an interesting shoe. A lot of people are saying this might be like the worst Travis Scott Nike collaboration and whatnot, but you know, I don't think that's the case. I think the case is that the shoe, there's like a disconnect between the shoe and Travis Scott. I think they've almost tried to force kind of a relationship between this shoe and Travis. Like the shoe itself is like, you know, it's like a cool, if this was like an ACG Nike shoe, like it would have been fine, but I feel like they try to kind of like shoehorn like Travis in here to kind of like make it more hype. So in that regard, I do agree it was kind of odd, but I think the shoe itself is pretty unique and I like it. It's pretty dope. So yeah, I'm gonna throw these on feet so you guys can see what they look like. And if you have any comments or questions, please leave them in the comments down below. Once again, thanks for watching. I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye.